At the White House check-in, my father raised his VIP invitation like a trophy and said, "You weren't invited." People turned. He wanted witnesses. I let him have them. I handed the hostess my own invitation. She scanned the QR code, checked my ID, and went pale. Then she looked past me at the admiral. "Sir." "She's here." My father's smile vanished. I leaned closer and whispered, "Surprise." What he didn't know was that 3 weeks earlier, he had tried to steal my inheritance, use my name, and bury me if his deal collapsed. And tonight, someone else was waiting for him inside with evidence. 3 weeks earlier, I was standing in my grandfather Walter's kitchen, watching rain stripe the old windows while coffee hissed in a dented percolator. The house smelled like cedar, dust, and the cinnamon rolls he used to burn every Sunday morning. His wooden ruler still rested beside the sink. Pretty walls don't matter if the foundation is rotten, he used to tell me. At 43, I finally understood he had never been talking only about houses. My family looked perfect from the outside. My father, Leonard Hale, owned a successful infrastructure consulting business. My mother, Elaine, spent years organizing charity dinners and smiling for photographs beside people whose names she dropped at Thanksgiving. My younger brother, Grant, ran contract development for Dad and wore confidence like a tailored suit. His wife, Vanessa, sold luxury homes and could identify the price of a handbag before she remembered the name of the woman carrying it. Then there was me. I directed strategic systems reviews for large public projects. My work was quiet, technical, and confidential. I checked whether complicated systems were safe, whether reports were honest, and whether powerful people were hiding risks behind polished presentations. My family heard review and decided I pushed paperwork. At dinner, Grant called my job safe. Vanessa asked whether I still packed lunch. Dad once told a room full of guests that I had never developed real ambition. I laughed when they laughed. That was easier than admitting how much it still hurt. The worst part was that I kept going back. I kept showing up at birthdays with carefully wrapped gifts. I kept answering Mom's late-night calls. I kept hoping that one day Dad would look at me the way he looked at Grant, with pride instead of mild disappointment. Grandpa Walter had been different. At my college graduation, my parents left early for one of Grant's award ceremonies. Grandpa stayed. He handed me a grocery store bouquet and said, "You built something solid. Bernie, don't let anyone convince you otherwise." That old house was the last thing he gave me. So when Mom called and invited me to dinner, saying Dad wanted a fresh start, I believed her. I should have known better, because by the time dessert arrived, 4 White House invitations were sitting beside Dad's wine glass, and a 5th item was waiting in front of my plate. Dad slid a blue folder across the table. It stopped against my dessert fork. "Sign it," he said. Inside was a temporary transfer of Grandpa Walter's house and the land around it. The document gave Dad's company control of the property for 6 months and allowed them to use it as collateral for a $50 million private loan. I looked up. "Why do you need my house for a $500 million contract?" Grant leaned back, swirling bourbon over one square ice cube. "Because real deals have moving parts, Bernice." Vanessa smiled over the rim of her wine glass. "Consultants, introductions, upfront commitments, 3 people, 3 different answers." Mom folded her napkin into a perfect rectangle. "Your father is giving you a chance to contribute." To what? Dad's jaw tightened. To this family. I read the first page again. The lender was not named. The repayment terms were vague. If the deal failed, I could lose the only place where I had ever felt fully wanted. "I'll have my attorney review it," I said. "No attorneys," Grant snapped. The room went still except for the soft ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. Dad reached for one of the White House invitations beside his glass. Thick cream paper, gold seal. He held it between 2 fingers like proof that the world had already crowned him. "We're being honored in 3 weeks," he said. 4 invitations, 1 for me, 1 for your mother, 1 for Grant, 1 for Vanessa. Vanessa touched her diamond earrings. "The ceremony will be photographed." Dad looked straight at me. "There is no 5th invitation." The words landed harder than I expected, not because I cared about champagne, cameras, or polished marble halls. I cared because he knew exactly where to press. He knew I had spent my whole life waiting to be chosen. "Sign the transfer." He continued, "And maybe I can make a call." Grant laughed under his breath. I closed the folder. No. Dad's face changed. The charming host disappeared. What remained was colder. "Do you understand what you're risking?" "My house. Our future," Mom corrected. Grant leaned toward me. "If this contract collapses because you refused one simple favor, I'll make sure every person in your field knows you sabotaged your own family. You don't control my field." "You'd be surprised what I control." Dad pushed his chair back. "Walk out without signing, and you are no longer my daughter." Mom looked down. She did not defend me. That silence hurt more than his threat. I stood, took my coat, and left the folder unopened on the table. The next morning, a preliminary safety review appeared in my work queue. I almost forwarded it without opening it. Then I saw the name listed under technical approval. Mine. I had never reviewed the system. I had never signed anything. And beneath my name were payments, bills, and a schedule of transfers totaling millions. That was when I understood. They were not only trying to take Grandpa's house, they were building a place to bury me. I drove straight to Grandpa Walter's house. By the time I reached the porch, rain had turned to sleet. My hands shook so badly I missed the lock twice. Inside, the rooms were cold and dark. I left my coat on, walked into the old drafting room, and sat on the floor beside his scarred work table. For 20 years, I had told myself my family did not understand me. That night, I admitted the truth. They understood exactly where I was weakest, and they had built their plan around it. I cried until my throat hurt. Then I noticed Grandpa's wooden ruler beneath a stack of yellowed sketches. Solid foundations. I picked it up and called Marcus Reed. Marcus had trained me early in my career. He listened without interrupting while I described the transfer papers, the threats, and the approval carrying my name. When I finished, he said, "Do not open anything outside your normal access. Do not contact your father, and do not try to fix this yourself. I'm listed as the reviewer. Then your first move is disclosure, by 8 the next morning." I was in a glass conference room with Marcus and Dana Cole, a financial fraud prosecutor. I handed over the transfer agreement Dad had emailed me, the messages Grant had sent after dinner, and the materials already assigned to my work queue. Payments, bills, transfer schedules, millions moving through companies that had no clear role in the project. I told them everything, including the part where Leonard Hale was my father. Then I signed a conflict disclosure and removed myself from the final review. It felt like surrendering control. Dana saw it on my face. "You're not stepping away from the truth," she said. "You're protecting it." 2 days later, Daniel Price, an engineer on Grant's project, asked to speak privately. He admitted Grant had ordered his team to soften 3 major safety warnings. Then, Daniel showed investigators a message that made my stomach turn. "If anything goes wrong." Bernice reviewed it. That sentence ended whatever loyalty I had left. The following afternoon, a plain cream envelope arrived at my office. Inside was an invitation to the White House ceremony. My name appeared above 3 words. Principal Honoree. Featured speaker. I placed it beside Grandpa's ruler. My father believed he had kept me outside. He had no idea the ceremony was waiting for me, and by the time he walked through those doors, the truth would be waiting too. The White House looked colder up close. Its windows burned gold against the January sky, but the security line outside moved beneath hard white lights. Cameras clicked. Dress shoes struck the stone. Somewhere behind the gates, a brass ensemble was warming up. Dad stood 3 people ahead of me in a black tuxedo, holding his VIP invitation between 2 fingers. He noticed me and turned slowly. Vanessa followed his gaze. Her smile sharpened. "Well," she said, smoothing the sleeve of her silver gown. "Look who found the employee entrance." Grant laughed. Dad stepped out of line, just far enough to block me. Then he raised his invitation like a trophy. "You weren't invited." He said it loudly. A couple behind us glanced over. Dad wanted an audience. He wanted me small. I didn't argue. I simply handed the hostess my invitation. She scanned the QR code, checked my ID, and froze. Her eyes moved across the screen twice. Then she looked at the admiral beside her. "Sir." "She's here." Admiral Marcus Reed turned immediately. His expression softened when he saw me. "Bernice." We were beginning to worry. Dad's invitation lowered an inch. Marcus stepped forward and offered his hand. Our principal honoree and featured speaker should not be waiting in the general line. The silence around us felt almost physical. Grant stared at Marcus, then at me. "Featured speaker," he said. I looked at Dad. His smirk was gone. I grinned. Surprise. Inside. Chandeliers reflected across polished floors. Waiters moved between guests with silver trays. The air smelled like coffee, perfume, and winter coats drying in heated rooms. My family was seated at a contractor table near the back. I was escorted to the front. Dad kept watching me as though he could force the room to correct itself. Vanessa leaned toward Grant and whispered. Elaine pressed a napkin against her lips. None of them understood yet. They still thought my invitation was the worst thing waiting for them. The ceremony began with speeches about public trust and the responsibility that comes with large government projects. Then, Marcus introduced me. Tonight's principal honoree led the independent review that identified serious risks before public funds were committed. I walked to the podium. For 1 second, I saw Grandpa's ruler on the drafting table. Solid foundations. Then I looked at the room. Our review found that the proposed system did not meet required safety standards, I said. Multiple warnings were removed from internal summaries. A reviewer's name was used without authorization. Financial records also revealed payments and bills that did not match the services described. Grant's face drained. Dad sat perfectly still. I continued. Because of my family relationship with one of the bidding firms, I disclosed the conflict and removed myself from the final decision. A separate team repeated the review. Their findings matched mine. That mattered. I wanted everyone in that room to know this was not revenge disguised as authority. The chair of the independent panel stepped to the second microphone. Effective tonight, the Hale proposal, valued at approximately $500 million, is suspended and removed from consideration. The related records have been referred for financial and legal review. The room went quiet. Dad stood. "This is a misunderstanding," he said. "I know people here." No one answered. He looked toward 2 men he had greeted in the lobby. Both turned away. Grant pushed back his chair. "I need some air." 2 investigators near the exit stepped into his path. "Mr. Hale," one said calmly, "we need you to come with us." Vanessa grabbed his sleeve. "Grant." He pulled away from her. Dad moved toward the aisle. "This is my daughter's doing." I stepped down from the stage before he reached me, up close. He looked older, not weaker, just exposed. "We're family," he said under his breath. "You can stop this." There it was. Not an apology, a command wearing the mask of love. "Family doesn't demand someone's home as collateral," I said. "Family doesn't use her name without permission. And family doesn't prepare to blame one child to protect another." His jaw tightened. "You're destroying us." "No," I said. "I refused to let you destroy me." The investigators approached. I lowered my voice. "I did not charge you. I did not sentence you. I told the truth. And other people verified it. What happens next belongs to the choices you made." For the first time in my life, Dad had nothing to say. They guided him and Grant toward a private hallway. No shouting, no spectacle. Just doors opening, then closing. Dad's invitation was still clenched in his hand. By the time he disappeared from view, the gold edge was bent nearly in half. The investigation lasted 7 months. That surprised people who expected everything to collapse the night of the ceremony. Real consequences rarely arrive with music. They come through quiet offices, sworn statements, frozen accounts, and envelopes no one wants to open. Dad's company lost the contract immediately. Then it was suspended from bidding on public work while auditors traced the payments Grant had tried to disguise as consulting costs. Several people cooperated, Daniel testified. 2 finance employees admitted they had been told not to ask questions. Grant blamed Dad. Dad blamed Grant. Neither of them blamed themselves. The records showed Grant had ordered safety warnings removed and approved the use of my name. He eventually pleaded guilty to fraud and making false statements during the bidding process. The judge did not care about his expensive suit or the names saved in his phone. Dad faced separate charges tied to the property scheme, financial misrepresentations, and his attempts to pressure me into signing over Grandpa's house. His attorneys called it a family disagreement. The court called it evidence. Vanessa was not punished for wearing diamonds or wanting a beautiful life. She was held responsible only for the financial papers she had knowingly signed. Once the accounts were restricted, the friends who filled her holiday parties stopped returning calls. Mom was never charged. That mattered to me. She had enabled Dad. She had protected Grant. She had watched them corner me and said nothing. But silence, cruelty, and favoritism were not the same as the financial crimes under investigation. Her consequences were different. The house was sold to cover debts and legal costs. Her charity circle quietly removed her from its board. The women who once leaned close whenever she whispered Leonard's name began avoiding her at the grocery store for the first time. Mom had to live without the image she had chosen over me. I was cleared of wrongdoing. The independent review confirmed that I had reported the conflict as soon as I discovered it and had removed myself from the final decision. Still, being proven innocent did not make me feel whole. So I started therapy. I stopped pretending the damage had begun at that dinner table. It had started years earlier. Each time I swallowed my hurt to keep the peace. I moved part-time into Grandpa's house and repaired the drafting room. I sanded the old work table, opened the windows, and placed his wooden ruler beneath a framed photograph from my graduation. I did not frame the White House invitation. I put it in a drawer. That piece of paper had opened an important door, but I no longer wanted invitations deciding where I belonged. One April morning, an envelope arrived from Mom. Her handwriting shook across the front. Inside, she asked to meet. She said she was beginning to understand what she had done. I read the first page twice, then folded it carefully. I did not answer that day. Forgiveness might become part of my healing, but access to my life would never again be mistaken for a family right. Outside, sunlight warmed the garden, and the silence around me no longer felt like abandonment. It felt like freedom. Family is not a license to use you, silence you, or make you carry the cost of someone else's choices. I did not win because my invitation mattered more than my father's. I won because I refused to become like him. I told the truth, protected what was mine, and let accountability do the rest. If you have ever had to protect yourself from the people who were supposed to protect you, know this. Setting a boundary is not betrayal. If this story stayed with you, share your thoughts and comments, send it to someone who needs it, and subscribe.